And we are live. Are we
Are we?
live? Confirmation that we're live.
Who knows,
Is it
mate?
on
Hang
there?
on.
Is it on YouTube?
Something. It says live on the screen.
Here we go. We have to check.
Yeah, I've got live on here as well.
I've got no live feed on YouTube.
You've got no live feed on YouTube. Well, I have. I got it. We're live. We're a few seconds behind, but we're live.
You're in charge, mate.
Okay, right. Welcome everybody to the first of this interesting little series. 4 people watching. Thanks for joining us. Trails, tails, and snails. So we're gonna have a little chat this evening. We are going to be joined shortly by another ultra running hero. He is doing the bedtime routine. Hopefully not for himself, otherwise we'll be left as a 3-piece. But that's okay. Hi from France, guys.
Bev in the house.
In the house. There we go. I love this new little layout. This little icon there. Look at that. That's class, isn't it? So if you are joining us, you're welcome to leave a thought, comment, suggestion in the chat. Unless the suggestion is to go, in which case we will just simply block you and ignore you. So, yes, shall we do a little introduction for the people that are here? 2 people with the same name.
Yes,
Ben
Bill.
number 1.
It's going to be confusing, isn't it? Ben 1 and Ben 2.
Who wants to be 1?
I'll be the one in the green.
Ben in the green. Graham's here. Hello from Kent. Lee's here. Hello from sunny Wales. I think he's from Wales, isn't he? Or is he from Scotland? Hard to tell the accent. Sunny Wales. Right, Benjamin 1, would you like to introduce yourself? Who are you?
Hello, everybody.
And what are you looking for tonight on Cilla Black's Blind Date?
A bit of fun. That's what I'm looking for. But yeah, no, I'm Ben Notley from my YouTube channel, which is Ben Notley, and I run. That's about it, really. I'm guessing there's a link in the description if you're interested in having a look. But
I think I've put a link in the description. I hope I have, because it'd be a bit embarrassing if I haven't. I think I should have done. If you go in the description box, you will find links to everybody's channel who's here tonight. Thank you, Benjamin 1. Benjamin number 2.
Hello, I'm Ben 2. So Ben O'Connell. I am from I live in Brighton. So I'm mainly running around like the South Downs, so around Sussex, and my YouTube channel is Time on Feet, where I do trails, park runs, marathons, ultras, etc. Link below.
Super. Do you want to talk about your run today? We had a head torch fail. I noticed that on Strava.
This was I've never had this before actually. Someone else had a head torch fail on a run, just went on me.
Really?
Yeah.
What, just completely just cut off?
Yeah, just cut off. I think, to be fair, it's probably because I hadn't charged it in a while. That
might be why, mate.
Yeah. I just thought the batteries were infinite, but they just went on forever. So I was out, and it was on the rockiest part of my run. So I was going along, and then it just went, and I just had to kind of try and use my phone for a bit, and then put it at the floor, but that didn't work so well. I got back home. So as you can see, I'm here. I could have ended up in a bush, but no, I've got here.
I was worried.
Speaking of getting here,
talk to Dan.
Look who else has got here. It's Michael. Michael has arrived.
Hello. I'm sorry I'm late, everyone. Nice to see you.
That's okay.
Right.
Well, we're just doing the introductions, and you're the only person called Mike, so that makes it easy. Who are you, Mike? Where are you from?
I am Mike. I'm from Kent, and I have been running for approximately 15 months, not non-stop. And I'm also something of a dancer, but we'll leave that for now.
Oh,
thank you for having me, Dan.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Just a little couple of hellos as well to fellow trail runner whose children don't follow my channel but do follow Ben's. But there we go.
Good choice.
Finisher of the arc and all-time hero, completing a run today, Mr. Valentine.
The man.
And we've also got do you know Graham then, Mike? Do you know Graham also from Kent?
Yep.
What you, Ben?
Hello, Graham.
You don't live in Kent.
No, but I know him from YouTube. He's in there in the comments.
So tonight we're here to just chat about the North Downs Way, really. I thought it'd be nice to get together, have a chat about our experiences, and just have a little reflection time about why we did the races, how we got on, thoughts, feelings, And I certainly know that I've had people contact with the races being announced for this year and so on and so forth, people who are entering for the first time, just looking for some advice. And I thought it might be quite nice to share our wisdom of sorts and see if we can get a little conversation going and hopefully help out some others who are, off on their journeys to train for either the 50 or the big boy, the 100. Got a few more people in the chat. Hello, Phil. TJV.
Oh, TJ from the States. Hi.
Oh, from the States.
Wow.
Yeah. International crowd. This is excellent.
Look at us go. Oh, yeah. Valentine's Day dinner. Yes, belated Valentine's. Always good to go the day after. Much cheaper. That's good, that is.
Yeah.
That's
Smart
always get your
advice.
brownie points.
Did you not want to watch while having your dinner? I mean, this is this is absolutely gold as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, this in the background.
Set the tone.
Absolutely. Sets the mood, doesn't it? Absolutely sets the mood. Right. So let's kick off with this then. Why did you enter run the North Downs Way? Now, Ben is slightly different because he ran along the North Downs Way, but it wasn't the actual North Downs Way Centurion race that we have all done. It's a slight
just go home then.
Slight variation. He did 66.6 miles along the North Downs Way. So I'm sure Ben can talk for himself. I didn't mean to do your introduction for you there, Ben. Sorry. But let's me kick off. So I did North Downs Way 50. The first year I did it was off the back of doing a 40-mile race, which was the Fox race. I did a terrible job. I came second to last, and I thought what I would do is go even bigger because I did such a great job on the 40. I thought the 50 is calling my name. And at that point, I didn't quite realise how much of a task the 50-mile was. So wasn't really giving it too much thought when I entered it, other than the fact it was local, and I thought that would be a good challenge. And so when I trained for the 50, I had no idea what I was letting myself in for. And on reflection, I was very, very undertrained for it. But ultimately, it was because it was local, and I thought that'd be good. I can train on some of the trails nearby where I live. And I just went in really without giving it any thought whatsoever, and not really understanding how far 50 miles is. So that's why I did the North Downs Way, and I did it a second time after not feeling like I did a very good job the first time. And I did the second time, didn't feel I did a very good job there either. So just gave up for the third time. Thought, no, I'm not doing that.
You'll do it again, mate. You will.
I will do it again. I will do it again once I can do it. A good training block, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Benjamin number 1 in the green shirt. Why North Downs Way for you?
Well, now it's local to me, isn't it? So it's like less than 3 kilometres away to get onto it. So, it's my daily training ground. So why not do a race on it? And also being inspired by you gents, seeing what you guys have done. Mainly you, Dan, first of all, like when you did it originally. That was amazing to see. So I thought, let's give it a go, innit? And I did the Omen, which was just basically a day out on the trails in the end. It wasn't a proper race. So, that was good. That was it.
Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome.
Ben number 2 in the black shirt.
Yeah, so I actually did it because I couldn't do the South Downs Way 50 because it clashed with a wedding. Nice. So, I was actually, all honesty, I was hoping to do the South Downs Way 50, but couldn't. And then thought, well, the North Downs Way is a nice one as well. And I got some family who live not too far from it. So I thought, well, I can, be a chance to kind of go up there a little bit when I recce it and race it. Decided to do it as that. So I did it last year as my first 50 miler. Initially I had kind of the South Downs Way 50 in my sights, but then I was like, okay, can't do that, so I'll do North Downs Way 50 instead. But was pleased I did it.
Yeah, we'll talk about your performance later because that was absolutely remarkable.
Epic.
Absolutely epic. We'll save that so people stay in the stream a bit longer. Just whet their appetite a little bit. Stick around until until later on for that big reveal. And Mike, what about you? Because you did something even more phenomenal.
Well, I did the 100, and as soon as I went past Knockholt at mile 50, I immediately regretted doing the 100, to be honest with you. But no, I joke aside, I live in Sevenoaks, and so a lot of my running is on the North Downs Way around here, a bit like you guys over sort of west. And the 50 stops at Knockholt, which is just down the road from me, which is why I'm doing it this year. But I know a lot more about the second half of the race, of the route. And I personally really enjoy that part, so I really wanted to do it. I think also the adventure, the idea of running 100 miles was just like so completely mad from my perspective that I thought, oh, why not give it a go? We'd had like, 2 years of COVID pandemics and lockdowns and everything else. So I thought better to get out, on my own in the countryside for 24 hours, 30 hours, and run 100 miles. So yeah. That's why I did it. That's the only reason, essentially.
Nice, mate.
I think it's worth also just focusing on the fact that Ben Bender runs. You didn't just. I know the race was sort of like cancelled or whatever, rearranged, wasn't it? But the fact that you ran 66.6 miles effectively off your own back, I think is incredible. And
Thanks, mate.
I'm sure everyone will agree on that. So yeah, I think we shouldn't sort of sweep that under the carpet, because I was very impressed that you managed to do that.
Well, and I was impressed that you were stood in the middle of the field to give me a cheer as I ran past. I mean,
yeah.
Hats off.
Yeah, Mike's the real hero in all of this.
Yeah.
He left his party to come and say hello. That was a big thing.
It was quite hilarious. I literally had said to everyone, guys, I've just got to pop someone running, and everyone's like, and I was half cut, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm sorry for jumping out and scaring you in the middle of a field in Rochester.
Brilliant. Oh, that made it worthwhile. I thought we'd done 63, 64 miles at that point, and just to see you there in the middle of the field, dressed so nicely, well presented in the middle of nowhere.
I wanted to make an effort for you. That's what it was.
Oh, you certainly did. You made my day. Thank you.
It was really good, because I was only joining for the last bit, but it wasn't the most enjoyable section. It was quite a tough, at that point, it was windy and it wasn't very, pleasant. And then all of a sudden, this little beacon of light creeping over the hill in a pair of jeans.
Yeah.
Let's go. And Ben went, "It's Mike." I thought, "What are you talking about, Mike? He's in a field." And sure enough, it was. But yeah, no, Ben
I had my brown leather shoes on as well. So
I think they were skinny jeans. They're quite taut against the skin, if I remember.
They're always skinny jeans. That's the unfortunate side effect of being a runner, isn't it?
But yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, Ben did that 66.6 miles. There was nobody else in the field. He did essentially the race by himself, joined by a few people along the way, but he did the entire route, having trained hard for it, and quite a serious effort. And this year, Ben, you are doing the North
both.
Both?
The 50 and the 100.
Oh, spoiler alert. I thought just the 100.
No, 50 and the 100. I didn't want to do the 50, if I'm being honest, because I kind of think I don't want to overdo it, because I do love that trail so much. I don't know what it is. It's something magical about it that just draws me back to it day after day. And I didn't want to do too much of it, but a race cancelled earlier on in this year. So it was the obvious choice, really, to go for that as training for the big boy. And I'm hoping that Mike can give me some advice on what to expect from the later stages. In the later stages, I've heard bad things about Detling, but I'm sure we'll get onto that at some point.
It's going to be a good year, really, really good year. And I know I'm talking about North Downs Way, but the rest of the folks in this group, I don't think, I think I'm the only person not doing a Centurion race this year, aren't I?
It's not too late, mate. It's not too late. Still plenty of space in the 100 left.
I know. Gives me a bit of a nervous bum thinking about it. So one thing I've been asked by quite a few people who are doing it for the first time is this here. People who just want to complete it is different to people who want to podium. I think sometimes those transitioning from a marathon think it's all about this, flat out from beginning to end. And sure, for people who are serious athletes and elites, then maybe they can do that. But for a majority of the field, most people are there to complete it. And it does involve walking. And I have sort of shared that with people. But are there any tips? I mean, for me, for example, finishing both times, I finished with about an hour and a half to spare from the cutoff, which was 13 hours for the 50. So still complete it within the cutoff time, which is great. But I certainly wasn't running for a lot of that because, the hills and fitness and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I was just sharing that walking is fine. But I wonder if you had any tips on how to get through the experience, either the 50 or the 100, or in fact the 66 bit, because doing it by yourself, Ben, that's there is an element of an ultra marathon where you do find yourself alone for periods of time. And I'm sure it's more obvious for a 100 miler, but certainly for the 50, there were times when you look back and look in front, there's nobody around, and you have to just kind of dig a bit deeper. But any tips for just completing for first timers?
I think, I'd agree with what you said on the hills, definitely. Like in terms of walking the hills, the good thing I think about the North Downs Way 50 at least is that I feel it's quite obvious where to walk because the hills are quite steep, and whereas on like the South Downs Way where I'm used to running, it's quite undulating, and you get bits where you think like, should I be walking this or shouldn't I be walking this? Whereas I think with the North Downs Way, well, certainly the 50, it's quite clear, like, okay, I'm probably not going to be running this. No, even the front of the field, they're not going to be running some of the hills that you've got in there, like with Box Hill and Botley Hill and some of the others. I can't remember the names of Reigate Hill. So definitely walking the hills and pacing as well. I think that goes for most ultras, but just pacing quite conservatively early on.
Good tips, good advice there.
Absolutely agree with you there, Ben. It's absolutely sound, and in your own route is really important. It's really easy to get carried away, especially I think on the North Downs Way 50 or 100, where you start in Farnham and you run down that sort of single track. It's really flat as well, isn't it? For the first, I guess, like 12k or so. So you can tick along. I mean, I was doing, I think, like 5:15 kilometers or something for the first 5k of the 100-mile run, which was completely stupid. I was like, oh, this is easy. Why is everyone moaning about this? It was so flat, so lovely, and you just get carried away. And the trouble is, if you forget your plan and if you forget your capability, essentially, that you'll come a cropper later in the race. And that's, I mean, that definitely happened to me at several points. And if your goal is to finish, and I think it's fair to say that I'm definitely not at the sharp end of the field, you've got to think about what your strategy is for the run and not get carried away with other runners.
Nice. I like that. Another thing I think to think about is what Ben said about the hills, also the descents, because they are, again, some of them are quite steep, and with the steps and things, there's a proper quad smashers in there. So have a think about even walking some of them at points. Just think, am I going to pay for this in 10 miles time?
And actually doing a bit of, I was going to say quad smashing, doing a bit of quad smashing in training isn't a bad thing. Like getting used to the downhills and what that feels like, and putting a bit of pressure on the joints and the muscles, building it up over time, of course, but getting used to that. Definitely training for downhill as well as uphill. I think that's a really good point.
The training is definitely key, and that's where I knew going into the second time round, I just wasn't ready to deliver what I wanted to. And if anyone's watched the videos, I did write down all the timings for the different aid stations to allow me to achieve this 10-hour time, which I want to aim for. But I realised something actually only a few weeks ago, exactly what you said, Mike, because that first section is so fast. I ran that first aid station trying to hit a certain time, which I did. But on reflection, I realised that person did the same thing that I was doing. Going flat out at the start. So it really threw me. It was only a few weeks ago. I thought, let me just think back. How did this actually work out? And it turns out that person, when I sort of analysed it again, was quite evenly paced for the last half. But the first sort of third was way too fast. And I got too caught up in that. And I paid the price because it wasn't fit enough. But it's worth noting that if you run a Centurion race, you can look at people's splits from the race the year before and the year before that if you want to. And that can give you a bit of a gauge as to how you need to move through the aid station if you want to hit a certain time. But equally, you've got to be fit enough. There's no way of faking fitness on a race like that, because there is a dropout rate from people. either through injury on the day or just, there's so many factors that can get to you, the weather especially. I know year on year it can be a little bit difficult to judge it in advance. Sometimes we get quite a wet period and sometimes it can be really, really hot. But all of those things you've got to try and train for. Training is absolutely key. And if you can get on the course, very, very important. We've actually got a question here from Graham, which I'm just going to jump into. Oh, actually, like Phil said here, run when you can and walk when you have to. And again, there's no shame in that. You'll find a lot of people walking. It's not like a marathon where you get to 22 miles and people are walking and you're thinking, if I walk now, it'll give me a little bit of a rest, but you don't really want to. In an ultra, you've got a long day. It's a long day and there's no reason why you have to run every single hill. And, like Ben said earlier, the people who are winning it, even they, I'm sure, will be pacing up the hill rather than sprinting up the hill.
100%.
Definitely.
And this question here from Graham, if I can put it up here, we go. So, favourite stretch. We're going to get onto this actually. St Martha's, and least favourite. I was thinking about this as well because
it's an easy answer for me.
Running it 2 years in a row, I did the Box Hill steps the first year. Not across stepping stones because that was closed. I did the steps the second year. They rerouted it around the side, which I actually hated a lot more because I felt like, because with the steps, it seems obvious, but there's a clear way of moving up through the hill. The reroute around the side just seemed to be a bit, there was nowhere to really put your feet to get a bit of traction. It was a little bit slippery. It was like kind of like limestoney, a bit of grass. It was quite dry on that day as well. So I really, really hated the Box Hill because it's also roughly 24, 25 miles. So you're just hitting that marathon distance and it's an absolute killer. And you get to the top and of course it's like I'm not quite halfway yet. And it's quite nice to have an atmosphere up there because it's always very busy. So that's nice. But the actual ascent for Box Hill, I really didn't enjoy it the second year. And I hadn't trained for that part either because I wasn't quite sure where the route was. But the first year of the steps, it's pretty obvious that it's up the steps and you just keep counting down till you get to the top. But for me, that hill was nasty. And equally, that one of the last hills before you get to the aid station in the car park, I forget what that hill is. But that's like towards the end, like 40.
Oh,
Botley Hill.
Botley Hill.
Yeah.
That's not very nice.
Yeah, that's my least favourite part. Definitely that. Yeah, massive hill up to Botley. But actually, the ridge along the top, like after,
it's nice.
After what was the Box Hill steps? Yeah, after Box Hill steps, that ridge along the top, where you get the nice views and you get the hustle and bustle. I quite like that. I think that and the long downhill towards Denby's or next to Denby's, I think it is, like where you go through the vineyard. Really like that part too. Yeah,
that's paved. Well, it's not much of it that's paved, but that's lovely. That section. If you don't like swearing, I wouldn't do the North Downs Way 50 or 100 when the steps are out of use, because I've never heard so much swearing in my life as I have at the bottom of that hill. When everyone came around the corner and saw it,
you just look up. It's so steep, isn't
language. I would say for my least enjoyable section, putting aside the fact that you're doing on the 100, you're doing the second half at night time, which in itself is a challenge, but the Detling Hill, which you mentioned earlier, Ben, that is a slog because you're doing it at night time unless you're like incredibly fast, and it's incredibly, and it just goes on forever, so that's something to look forward to, definitely. If you've got 100 coming up later in the year, Ben, that's keep that in mind, because
thanks, mate.
It makes, in my opinion, it makes Botley Hill look like a little mound. So
I was going to say, it's like doing Box Hill again, isn't it? Like after 80 miles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Can't wait. So worst bit for me, my worst bit, Dan. It's actually the bit that's nearest to me. Annoyingly, I think it's because two reasons. I run it all the time, and also there's no views whatsoever. So from Newlands Corner to sort of just before you get to Ranmore, before Denby's, and it's just all in the trees, and it's nothing. It's just monotonous, and it's sort of semi-paved, so it's just a bit bland. So I really don't like that section. And as for the best bit, Don't know. I sort of like the bit before you get to Otford, is it? So Oxted to Otford, or is it the other way around? Like somewhere there, like there's some nice bits when you're going around sort of the quarries, and yeah, that's quite nice.
Yeah,
the only
that's
thing
really
that brings
nice.
it
There's that
down a
hill
little
in
bit
Oxford.
is the hum of the M25 a little bit sort of takes a shine off. But apart from that, yeah, it's quite nice.
It is a really nice trail. There's so many. If you get a good day out with the weather, it's just great because again, you can get caught up in the atmosphere of it all, looking around, taking some pictures. If you know that you're quite comfortable with completing within 13 hours, you can have a really good day out and really enjoy it. And that's the key thing about it. I think you get too excited. It brings one to. I just saw Phil's point here. I meant to mention earlier. So the first year I did it was, I think it was one of the first races after COVID, or after that first block of COVID. And so what was really good was you were being sent off the line in sort of waves, but in kind of like ones, and that meant that you ran to your own race almost straight away. Whereas, of course, the following year in group pack, you just go flat out because it's very, very easy to get caught up in the moment. So for me, if you're comfortable in doing that, you just get out of your head. It's definitely a good idea just to wander off the line. However, that first section, as Mike said earlier, is a lot of single track, and it can be quite irritating if you're trying to just get into a flow. There's a lot of start-stop. Sometimes the gates are open, sometimes they're not, and it's about 16k from Farnham to Guildford, and there's a lot of single track, quite difficult to pass people if you're trying to get into a bit of a flow. But I definitely noticed a difference between year 1 and year 2. And my pacing was slower year 1, but more consistent, whereas year 2 was, just not quite as I wanted it to be. Another little question here. Stomach issues. So for me, I did have a bit of a stomach issue the second time around. I don't know what it was down to really. I guess it could have just been a gel or whatever. But I never really got to sort of the end of what that might have been, because it eventually went and it was fine. But I've always just trained with the same gels and hydration that I've been using on the day. I've just been pretty consistent from day one with that. I did take a cheeky little Serene bar on my first 50 miler towards the end, which I really felt like I wanted, and it turns out they're really difficult to swallow and digest after 45 miles. Terrible error. But I've been pretty lucky, touch wood, no real actual stomach issues in an ultra.
I had stomach issues on the North Downs Way 50 from about maybe 50k in, so 31 miles. But the thing that I tend to do is if I find my stomach's not settling with things, is just to revert back to like really simple things. So I was having, at the aid stations, they have a really good selection of fruits. I was having like watermelon, strawberries, and then water until my stomach settled again. And then I kind of reintroduced things slowly, like flapjack or other stuff. But yeah, I find that generally works, like just going back to very, very simple stuff. And otherwise, Lee mentioned there about ginger as well. Yeah, so actually for the North Downs Way 50, I had active root, which is always ginger based, and I find that really helps settle the stomach. Really, really good.
Anyone else? Ben, any issues stomach? Mike?
Stomach issues? Not for me. No, I've never actually really suffered with anything. When I ran the Omen, didn't actually have any issues with my stomach. I didn't even need to go to the toilet once, and that's 1 or 2, which was bizarre. So yeah, I mean, 13 hours, and I was eating like eating and drinking
you were eating well. Yeah.
Just nothing. So that was bizarre. Very bizarre how that works, but
just
Ben
evaporated.
It must have sweated it out. I don't understand. But yeah, the active route seems to work really well, and I think it was good. I managed to keep the salt balance quite good as well, so I didn't suffer with any cramping, anything like that. So I know that's not really anything to do with stomach issues, but keeping the salt on top of that was quite good. I think I managed that well on the day. And recently I've been training, when I've been going out in the evening runs, I've been trying to eat first before I go. So I smash a curry and then get out and do 15k on the trails straight off the back of it, just to make sure you get used to that sort of sloshing around feeling in your stomach. kind of thing.
And
then
no
praying nothing happens.
No emergencies so far.
Exactly. No, it's been pretty good so far. Yeah, I mean there have been the odd occasion, like on the longer runs, but yeah, it's really good. So I would advise to train your stomach if you can to eat things like you're going to have on the race day, like Centurion. I know at Knockholt and that they're offering out pasta and with a tomato sauce or something. Maybe eat that. 5 or 10 minutes later, get out the door for like a 10k or something, and just sort of see what issues it's going to cause you.
Yeah, it's definitely
It's
key to eat.
Jan.
Yeah, it's key to eat real food, solid foods, because I just don't think you're going to survive really on just gels for the day. It's different to a marathon, and you're probably going to need a bit of variety, especially early on. Eating real food early on, then going to gels later on the race, because it's just easier to stomach that way. But your active route, another comment for active route. I've only tried it a few times, but you're a big fan, aren't you, Ben? You've
I really like the. Was it spearmint? Is it the mint and ginger one?
Peppermint.
The peppermint. Yeah, I rate that a lot. It's quite nice and refreshing. If you could get it cold, I could drink a lot of that.
Yeah, but if you do Centurion, the A stations are phenomenal. There's so much variety there, and it's very, very tempting. That's all I would say. Don't be tempted by certain things that are new for you. You can try them afterwards when you get to the end, but don't be picking up something that you think's a good idea at the time when it might not work out for you. And then on that as well, I get asked occasionally about kit. And it is different for everybody. It doesn't mean like the specifics of, necessarily what shoes and things you're wearing. But in terms of the day, so if we think about the 50 and the 100, there is a kit list, and it's quite extensive because depending on the weather, you are required to carry more or less the entire kit list. Days when it's quite warm and you think, I don't actually need a second layer, this and the other, it's there for your safety. So North Downs Way kit, how are you holding it for the day? How did you find that? And was it the same in your training leading up to it? Anyone want to jump in first on that one?
I just leave my bag packed all the time. So if I'm going out on a long run, it's always there. I've always got it in there. Just an old base layer, like stuff that I don't use on the regular, that I probably wouldn't use in an emergency on the race day. It just lives in that vest, and that is it. Just stays there. Like stuff, even like things that aren't even compulsory. I've got a compass in there. Kind of feel like it's good to have the weight on your back as well. That helps build a bit of strength.
Yeah, how does that work for the 100?
Sure.
What are you carrying? Because are you training with the amount of kit that you're carrying with you for the 100?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I take a similar approach to Ben. Kind of keep everything ready to go, especially when you're kind of stuck for time and you want to get out for a run a week. Just to pick it up and go is really important. I think I was less worried about the kit I was carrying in terms of weight or whatever, because frankly, I'm quite heavy anyway, so a few extra kilos isn't really going to make a huge difference to me. But equally, I found that carrying water, I had the two on the front of your back, so I've got a running backpack with the two on the front. And I must admit, I don't know how about them. So some days I'm fine with them. On the 100, I found them to be a tiny bit awkward, and actually maybe having it on the back with a pipe or whatever. Or I think, Dan, you have a handheld, don't you?
Yep.
Might have been more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a handheld. I've got used to it. You do have to get used to it. On the first time round I used a vest. Second time round I just used the naked band. And I think if the kit list was reduced slightly, or rather I took less gels and had more faith in all the aid stations, you could definitely get away with a waistband for the 50 for sure. And there's a point here, by the way, which I felt was fact, and I really do feel this is fact, that whilst Tailwind are the kind of like the poster child for hydration on the day, it's absolutely watered down for sure, because when I've not used a sachet towards the end of the race, I thought I'd just fill up with Tailwind. It's not the same. It definitely isn't. And I may well be wrong with that, but I genuinely think it's totally watered down because it just doesn't have the same potency. And I know it's a big vat of it, isn't it? I don't want to get the exact measurements correct, but it definitely doesn't hit in the same way as a sachet does when you need it. So I would say be very, very careful if you're a tailwind fan. You've got to take your own sachets, which is awkward and a bit of a pain, but necessary for sure.
Yeah, don't forget you have the drop bag as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
No worries. I was just going to say that if I was to do the North Downs Way 50 again, and actually any Centurion 50 miler, I'd probably take along less food. I overpacked at the start with the amount of food I had in there. It was like enough for like a picnic for a small family. But yeah, if I was to go along and do it again, I think I'd have more kind of faith in the aid stations. I think, it was a bit of an unknown because I hadn't done that distance before. I didn't really know what Centurion events were like, but actually I know now that I can rely more on their aid stations. But I'd totally agree with I've started using Tailwind now, not that I did at North Downs Way 50, but if I went along, I'd definitely take my own Tailwind.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the table as well, if anyone's interested, they do offer vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free. There was a big spread for dietary requirements, so it's something to consider because I have been at races before where table looks great, but nothing that I can personally eat. So Centurion do a very good job of having that sort of insight and wisdom to allow all people who are taking part in their races to at least have the opportunity to use the aid stations. Great question here from Mark, beautiful videos out in Finland there. The getting out the door, because the training for the 50s and for the 100, you're definitely doing more time out on the trails, and it's going to take away from either family time or just kind of personal time, and those long runs do get longer. And what motivates you to getting out the door, especially when you're training through the winter, let's say, for these kind of spring races, spring marathons and ultra marathons?
Yeah, I'd say on a basic level, running feels like a necessity, really. Just for me to feel like mentally good and for me to feel like I'm on top of things in my life, I just have to have running in there. So yeah, for me, it's necessity first and foremost. And then secondly, I'd say just a love of the trails and love of getting out there and exploring. So I think that those are kind of the core things. In terms of like specifically for an ultra event, then it's just the challenge or overcoming barriers or difficulties that you think you couldn't before. And I find that really empowering, just to constantly move towards an event or a distance or a time or whatever it is, where actually you think to yourself, no, I probably couldn't do that, and then you give it a go, and often you can. Not always, but you get surprised, and I think I find that really empowering.
Nice.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important for you have to love it to do it, don't you? Basically, if you don't run it, then ultra marathons probably isn't your thing. But I'm completely with you there. I think like, from a mental health perspective, running, getting outside, getting some fresh air and getting some you time, I suppose, is the number one sort of motivation from my perspective. You've got lots of other things going on in your life. It's good to have a hobby that's yours, that gives you the headspace that you need. So yeah, I mean, I'm a massive believer that in running as a mental health tonic, I suppose.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
and for me, I feel ill if I don't. Like today, I haven't gone for a run, and I'm like itching. I'm like, I could just go out and just do 15k now or something, just a quick little thing. So it's physical as well as mental. I'm like, my feet are just trembling. Like, just let's go. Come on, let's do something.
Yeah.
I definitely think health, well-being, and let's face it, it's not always spoken about by people, but when I've stepped away from running for a period of time to focus on family, whilst I was present for my family, I wasn't the best version of myself because it turns out I needed the run, needed the headspace. That was kind of like my thing, my time alone. And when you're training for an ultra, you need to train into being alone as well and having time for own thoughts, because throughout the day, there are going to be periods of time where you're feeling, this question actually just here, you're feeling like it's either going really well or you go into a bit of a dark space, and it's getting yourself out of that by knowing that I've been on some tough runs, I've been here before. And to answer that question there, Phil, for sure, you can train it. You can train the positivity into yourself, because I didn't have any idea what 50 miles looked like, nor did I feel like I could achieve it. But I was motivated by the personal goal of doing it. And I felt like that was one of those milestones in my life that let's just give this a go. And if I don't do it, I don't do it. And then once you have overcome, like anything you start running, you overcome that first 1K, 5K, 10K, and all of a sudden you realize you can do it. Once you've done it once, you can certainly do it again. But you do need to invest time in the training, because you will be challenged in an ultra, and you need to dig deep in yourself. And the community around you is absolutely phenomenal, because a lot of people are in the same place at the same point in the race. But you have to, certainly train in opportunities for things to go completely wrong, to go out in terrible conditions, because the weather in August should be sunny, but who knows? It could be torrential rain. If you spent the entire time indoors waiting for a good spell of weather, you're not really helping yourself out. You really need to, almost to face the adversity, get over it, or come home crying, but then no, I'll go out tomorrow, tackle it again. That's my feeling on it.
That's excellent.
JBS, thank you for the super stick. I never had one of those before, so thank you for that.
Wow.
Right, I'm just going to jump in here, catch up with some little questions. So what Graham's got here, Frank as well. Could you be tempted to go for the special buckle in August based on your own performance? I think sub 24 definitely doable. And I mean, again, I'm just not speaking on Elle's behalf, but the training that you're doing at the moment, Ben, is putting you. I'm assuming that you're feeling confident about the idea of taking on the 100, knowing that you've done the 66 before, and at the moment your consistent training is giving you, I assume, a level of confidence going into it that you might not have had if you tried to the 100 maybe this time last year.
I feel really confident, mate, to be honest with you. I don't know if I'm probably doing a bit too much, if anything. I think I'm probably going to end up breaking myself if I carry on the way I'm going. But I mean, anything's possible at the end of the day. I can train as much as I want, but if something goes wrong on the day, there's nothing I can do about that, is it? I could, anything could happen to my legs. I could, just completely crash and end up going home in an ambulance. Who knows? So, I mean, up here mentally, I'm confident I could probably break the 24-hour, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, so think about this, Mike. When you went into your 100, in terms of the cutoffs there, because Centurion, I suppose, one of the few races that have quite a tight cutoff for, let's say, the everyday runner. It's quite a tight turnaround to try and get those miles in. How did you feel going into the 100 with those cutoffs?
Well, I mean, I was kind of ignorant to bliss in some ways. I mean, I kind of was aware of the cutoffs, but I was just like, well, I'm going to run my own race, and if I manage to get to the end, then fantastic. Like, that's pretty much was my goal. One thing I did find was actually that managed to get a few miles in. The first half, I think I got to Knockholt at mile 50 in about 11 and a half, 12 hours or something like that. And I was really pleased with that. But the overnight running I found quite challenging. And also, like, I was starting to get some, soreness to my legs and everything else. So I ended up doing, I think, something like 29 hours or something. It was nowhere near a record-breaking time. But I never, at no point was I worried about being cut, because I'd all sort of bagged that initial 50 miles. I personally think that the cut-offs on the North Downs Way 50 or 100 are pretty fair. And I have seen some races that I've been thinking about doing where the cut-offs are much more sharp and you have to be really on it to meet them. So yeah, I think it's pretty good, to be honest with you. And it doesn't matter what time you get to the aid stations, whether it's like 3 a.m. or whatever, the stations are on it and they're brilliant, and they will continue to go right up to the cutoff, which is astounding, because it does perk you up. for those early hours of the morning.
Yeah, I see Lee's there talking about some ultras don't have cut-offs, and I have seen that before. I think it's important to say that when you take on an ultra marathon, you do need to. There is definitely a level of taking it seriously that you need to put into your training. I think it's not quite the same as rocking up to a half marathon with little training and just giving it a go, because the element of safety is there as well. But you need to look after yourself, and also the people that are running the event don't really want to be picking you up mid-trail, because it's very, very hard to get location points. So that's what I would say as well. I think going into the first 50, I probably wasn't aware of the potential dangers that are out there if you're not alert and going into it in sort of the right manner. It's a great event for sure, but I think it's quite clear when you go to those that sort of briefing in the morning that you do need to look after yourself. You need to make sure you've got the appropriate kit with you, which is why the kit list is there. But also being able to look after other runners, because there are definitely periods of time, like I said, where between aid stations, there isn't anybody up and down the course with a sort of reflective jacket waving you on. You're not going to see anybody that's affiliated with the race until the aid station. So, yeah, I think certainly taking it seriously. And one thing I do want to talk about as well, because we've all done this, and I'm such an advocate for this. Even if you don't put it public, I really wish people do more of it, and that is the filming part of it. It's until you do it, it might seem like a bit of a wacky thing. But even if you don't do anything with that video apart from store it on your own computer, just keeping it for sort of personal use, to film it, to document the experience, I found so valuable. Partly because if you're on your own, you've got essentially yourself to talk to, but it can get you through some tricky moments because you can always just get it out there. And again, filming the first, the second time round, I did film it slightly differently, but ultimately, I think filming the experience, you've got to film the highs and the lows. When you're feeling rubbish, you don't necessarily want to expose yourself like that and film in that way. But when you get to watch it back, you can see, wow, I was in a really, really tough place and I came out of it. And that comes back to that point earlier about being mentally strong. You can see that shift of, I look close to tears to 20 minutes later, I've really perked up there. That looks, well done me kind of thing. We've all filmed our experiences in different ways, in a kind of in our own unique way, if you like. But what about tips for filming on those races?
I don't know, mate. I don't know what I can tell you. Well, don't do it. No, honestly, I think it really is, like you say, it's a great tip to keep you motivated as well, not only for the race itself, but for the training. Like if you're going to put what you're doing out there, not necessarily to public, but even if it's just a family or friends or whatever, if you're saying you're going to do something, and it just sort of gives you that accountability. I know you could look at it on Strava or whatever, but that doesn't really show the whole picture. It's just like a few stats and numbers, isn't it? If you can see like physical emotion and actually what you're experiencing, it gives it a bit more context. So I think in terms of training wise, not necessarily so much the race itself, even though it is a nice thing to look back on, I think that's really good for accountability and also keeping you motivated. Like, I like sharing this with people. It's really good. It keeps me motivated and gets me back out the door. Like, this is what I'm going to do this week, and I'm going to share it with everyone, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll enjoy it. But it gets me out the door, and that's something I enjoy about recording things for you all on YouTube. So yeah.
It is, it's really rewarding when someone says like, I watched your video of this race and I'm thinking of doing it, or I've signed up for it. Or when someone just asks you a question and then, you tell them a little bit about the race or your race experience, and just being able to share that, I think, is really rewarding. So that's what I'd say. If anyone's thinking of like filming a race and putting it out there, then it's really good, like from a running community point of view, but also just personally, to be able to look back, like actually, because we were doing this evening, I looked back at my North Downs Way video from last year, and just to be able to see it was like really interesting. And I realize things about yourself, I think, when you look back at the video of you racing. And I think one of the things I realized was that actually I tend to I tend to appear much more comfortable than I actually am, because some of those points in the race where I was really feeling it, I actually didn't look, on the outside so like visibly, falling apart. So yeah, there's whereas inside I knew at the time I was like, oh god, I feel terrible. So it's just interesting, I think, just to get that perspective, because obviously you can't see yourself whilst you're racing, but you'll be able to see what you actually look like. It's quite funny.
Yeah. I never
What
thought
about
of it
you,
like
Mike?
that. It's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's if we're asking about tips for filming, I mean, I'm not an expert technically. It is quite challenging to run a long run and to remember to film. And then I personally really, and I guess you guys are the same, like I really like the creative process as well, like making the videos and stuff afterwards. Like it's me quite joy. If you don't like that end of it, it's another bit of work to do. But in terms of the sort of technical tips for filming, I use a 360 camera because then I don't have to really worry about where it is. I can just stick it on and talk, and then later on I can worry about where it's pointing. So I appreciate that I'm lucky to have one, but yeah, that really beneficial. The other thing is, if you're doing a race that's longer than, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours, you're going to need to carry with you additional power sources and things like that. And it's interesting what you were saying earlier, Dan, about what kit carry back. One of the major things that I had to think about on the North Downs Way 100 was, where the hell am I going to carry my spare battery, SD cards, like all this, is the lens, like things like that, which in hindsight you sort of think, oh, we could do without that pressure, but actually it meant that you could film, or I could film the whole thing. So yeah, I would thoroughly recommend taking a slim battery pack that you can just into and charge it up, or a spare battery that you can just swap out. Get a decent selfie stick. Like, it's really embarrassing, in my opinion, carrying one when you're running along, and it takes a bit of getting used to. But people really mean, a lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, can I be in your video and stuff?" And so it's quite nice. And yeah, and worry about what you capture afterwards. Just capture as much as you can, and as Dan, I think, and said, like, just be honest with what you're filming, because I'm not a running expert, but what I can do is share my experience, and then afterwards you can then pick and choose and edit it depending on how you want it to come across. You find things that you didn't know you were doing. So yeah, but there are a few little tidbits there from me.
Nice.
The thing I would say, just to add to that as well, is think logistically about how you can ensure filming the experience and having your camera there is not going to hamper your ability to do the race well. I mean, in terms of, like, one of the things I found really tricky was, like, knowing where to put the camera in amongst my bottles and food and all of this. So one thing I've started doing more recently is actually having the camera completely separate in a belt. So I have my race vest, and the camera stuff is nowhere on my race vest. It's just in a waist belt, because then I can kind of separate it out and I can access drinks and food really easily, and not have to worry about taking the camera out to get a bit of food, to get some drink. So that's one thing I'd say. Just try and think about how you can kind of separate it out and not have it making things difficult in terms of your nutrition or hydration.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take some getting used to, and obviously the more you train with it, it's another training tool, isn't it? I've got it here. You have to take some time to practice what that's like to run with it, because it's quite a long shift to be holding the camera for the entire time. You need to have a way of managing it. But like Ty says here, thanks for your kind words, Ty. It depends what you want to film it for. If you're filming it to bring some attention to the race, it might be a new race nobody knows about. That's fantastic. I know when I originally did the North Downs Way, there wasn't really much out there for me to look at. I think there was a couple of videos from more elite runners who filmed every 10, 20k or so, but the race was not really shown in the kind of aspect that I was looking for to try and get a sort of an understanding of the course. So if you're filming it for YouTube purposes to share with the world, you might film it slightly differently. But I've always filmed first and foremost for myself, for my family in the future, at the time at least, to hopefully look at and say, wow, 10 years ago you did that race, that's quite cool. And then to kind of have it up there. But I do think, again, what Martin says here, there's certainly a time and a place for it. If you want to go out and you want to really focus your attention on really delivering a great result, then maybe you would choose a minimalist approach. I don't think I would do phenomenally better by not filming. I think if it was a shorter race, I mean, like a park run, for example, I know, like I filmed a few park runs just for fun with a time lapse. It does cut into your running form and stuff. It's a short race. You probably don't need to be doing that. But over that kind of distance, I knew I wasn't going to be top of the field. So it didn't really matter too much to me to film. But again, there's a time and place. A lot of my training runs, I didn't film them. You might do a little sort of weekly update, but most of the runs I do at the moment, I'm out the door. Yeah, I'm not thinking about anything. There's no media on me at all. It's just me going for a run. But certainly for the races, it's been nice, I think, to just shine a bit of a light on Centurion and what they offer for people who like time, want to have a go for the first time, give you a bit of perspective about what it's like. And Ben, can we please talk about your phenomenal experience for your first time, please? How well you did.
How well I did.
Not you, Ben.
This one down here. That one.
Oh, Ben too.
Ben number two.
This one.
Ben number two. For anyone who doesn't know, he did. So if you joined late, he did his first 50 last year, and we need to talk about the position you came, because I think it's important, because it was just a phenomenal result for somebody who worked incredibly hard. Training seemed to be really quite epic. Some great races up until that point, some great training runs, and then on the day it came together and you got a time of
8 hours 40.
Yeah.
I've actually got part of the, it went really smoothly for me overall, but part of the reason, Dan, is thanks to you, because of your tip about the having the times of someone who'd done the time that you're aiming for.
Yeah.
I dug it out earlier. Bit of show and tell here. This was what I had with me.
Nice.
And
That's
it was
brilliant.
basically, I was aiming for sub 9, so that was my A goal. And I just had the like Dan mentioned, like earlier, the times for someone who'd done sub 9 before in terms of the aid stations. But I found it gave me such a psychological boost going through, to know that like I was a few minutes ahead at the first aid station, and then there was just this accumulation, 5 minutes ahead at the next one, 10 minutes ahead at the next one. I just found it a really, really useful thing. And it depends on what works for you psychologically, but for me, to know I'm kind of ahead of where I want to be really gives me motivation, gives me a boost. I'm like, oh, things are going well, and I'm doing good. And up until the race, I had thought that, I'll actually, if I don't get on those times, then I'll adjust, because you have to. I was trying not to be too rigid with it, but it just so happened on the day that things went well. Although I had little things here and there, like the stomach issues I mentioned early on, and a little bit of cramp. In the end, I couldn't have asked for a better day in terms of how things went.
It was just so good, so inspiring, because we did the same race, and I was just so thrilled to hear how well you had done, and to watch the video back, and just to see just it all coming together was so great. It was almost like, even though at that stage we met on the day for the first time, it's kind of like a proper like cheerleader for somebody who who's done really well. And yeah, it was just so
amazing.
Great. So
thank you.
Quality run.
And that's what also is about filming. I do wish more people who are at kind of the top end of the field would film a bit more. What's that like, passing through? Presumably all the aid stations are full. And,
on your own.
It'll probably still set the
start.
table up. Yeah. But just, again, quite nice just to get a flavour of, like, I've gone through 20k, it's feeling good. Gone through 50k, I'm ahead of where I want to be. Because a lot of people in that top end don't film, don't document it. So it's really hard to gauge, is that race going how they want it to go? Are they still feeling the same things that we're feeling further down the field? I don't know. It's kind of a wish of mine that more people would do it, but each
You'll get there one day, mate. That'll be you.
Yeah, one day I'll be there and I'll be filming myself lifting the trophy when everyone else is ill.
Yeah.
We'll all reroute off somewhere else and I've moved some of the signage. But yeah, it's just, I think well done to all of us for taking the time to film it. It takes a lot of effort to put it online. And I think, I'm sure further down the line, more and more people will see the videos we've all put together and we'll take part in the race. And I hope success for them as well, because it's great. I really enjoyed the experiences. Absolutely the toughest thing I've ever done, but you get through it and then you realize a few weeks later that actually anything is possible. And now you've done it once, you can do it again. And it's just about approaching it in the way that you want to in order to get maybe a different result or the same result, but just get through the experience of, third, fourth, fifth, 10th time.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I do find that there's that period, maybe a couple of weeks after a race, where you're recovering, and then you start to romanticize it a bit after, and sometimes that kicks in like a couple of days, and other times it takes a little bit longer. But it's strange because actually, like for at least several hours after, I'm thinking to myself, like, that's grueling. Why the hell did I sign up to it? Why did I do it? But then there's that period of like, no, actually, I want to go back and experience that again. But it just depends on the race, I suppose, in terms of, how long. But, I haven't done 100 miles before, and I can't imagine with, the period after that. I mean, what's it like in terms of, did that take you a while to think I want to do this again? Or do you want to do it again?
I do, and it does. And you're doing the South Downs Wave 100, aren't you, this year, Ben?
Yeah. So in June.
Is that right? Yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you get on with that. Following your yes, I mean the worst thing that you could possibly do is pretty much what I did, which was I phoned my wife from the finish and said, "I'm safe. I'm never doing that again. That was flipping horrible." And then about 3 days later, I was like, I quite want to do 100 miler at some point again. And my wife, Amy, was just like, Mike, for goodness sake, you called me 3 days ago and told me you're never doing this again. So that romanticizing it is absolutely that's exactly what I do.
Bang on.
And actually filming it, going back to filming it is really important. It does remind you of all the bits that were not quite so good, because it's a really long way and it does hurt. The other thing that I would just say is, like, I think I spent maybe 5 days sleeping downstairs after the race. Couldn't actually climb upstairs, so it does take its toll physically as well, I think, doing these things. And I think someone said earlier, like, if you're not prepared for it, you can't fake it. I think, Dan, you said you can't fake fitness. You definitely can't fake the strength that you need to get, physically to get through that sort of distance. So, a life lesson that I learned at Wendover last year was pretty much that. I was undertrained. I was 2030, and then I was like, no, it's not happening. So, there's proof in the pudding, but we'll have to see. I probably won't do 100 if I know either of the Bens are doing it, because there's absolutely no chance that I'm going to be able to keep it. So we'll try one at some point.
Come on, mate.
You can just do the filming. But to give some perspective
just
on
follow
that,
you.
Just follow along. When you think about the event afterwards, about entering it a second time, I didn't really think twice about doing it. But yesterday I went to the dentist. I said to my partner, Chloe, who was in the car, and I said to her, genuinely, before I go in here, I would rather run a 50 again than go into the dentist right now, which sounds absolutely crazy, doesn't it? But I was just like, just to give you an idea of how little I want to go in there and what I would rather do, even though I know it would be a really difficult day out right now in the condition I'm in, I would rather do that than go to the dentist. It's just like that association where even though I know that 50 was hard work, there are still other things that are quite minor in my life that would have, zero pain. I would still rather do the 50 again than go through the turmoil. That I think, looking back as well, when you look at the videos, I watch my video back occasionally and think to myself, I could do that again. That looks great. I tried to film it as honestly as I could, so I can see the moments where it went completely downhill for me. and it's pretty transparent that I wasn't having a very good time in both races. But yeah, I would still do it again. I'm just very aware that in order to feel happy with a result, I need to train in a certain way. Otherwise, it'd just be a waste of my time doing it again, because I wouldn't feel satisfied with it, and it would just be entering for the wrong reasons, which is why I'm sort of not, throwing my hat into the ring this year. I just want to make sure I approach it correctly. Little one here from Joy. Yes, John. Savoury stuff. So we did mention this slightly earlier about the different aid stations and picking and choosing the appropriate foods that you need at the time, because sometimes you are craving foods you wouldn't normally want. I'll have an apricot. I've had one of those since about 2006. But you're
Primary
like,
school.
it's an apricot there. I'll have one of those. Peach slices from a tin. In the moment, you can be sick of certain things. Too much sweet stuff goes the wrong way. I think to have neutral. This second time around, I went Tailwind. I went for the neutral flavour rather than the previous year when I went all the sweet stuff, because it does really get to you. Yes, Ben. Ben, sorry, Mark. Exactly right. The right now. That's going to be the strap line across the top.
Title.
Title. I'd rather the dentist right now. So, with all this said, now thank you so much for all of you and your efforts for filming the Centurion races. I really, really can't wait to see how you do this year. You've all done an amazing job online as well, promoting these races. So I'm sure, like I said earlier, it will give other people the chance to get an idea about what's in store for them. One last quick question before we depart together. Would you do an ultra overseas?
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
And we're all going to do it when we all get into UTMB. Come on, let's go.
I was going to say that. That's that'd be next level, wouldn't it? Oh,
yeah.
Imagine. That's the
That'd
dream.
be cool. I think I'd like to do the one out in one of the ones out in Spain. I forgot the name of it now, but those look quite nice. Just those mountainous ones. The weather looks great. I'd love to try something a little bit different to the standard UTMBs. I'd like to just pick a race that maybe isn't as well known, but is featured on sort of the ultra calendar. That'd be really cool. It's just a funding thing, isn't it?
That'd be cool.
There we go.
Yeah,
it's just a funding thing.
As well. Yeah,
it just costs. It costs money, and it's also taking the time off
it's a lot, isn't it?
This and the other. I'm sure if we were in a position to, we would.
I've been looking at one of the UTMB races in Nice later on this year. I probably won't do it this year, but it happens in September. But yeah, to do one of those would be amazing. Just to go somewhere different and get that atmosphere and amazing trails too. But yeah, would love to.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
really, really cool.
Yeah. Comrades,
so watch this space. Next live stream will be in different continents, talking about our upcoming races. But thank you so much for everyone who's been in the chat this evening. Thank you to the three of you for joining me on this new little sort of adventure on the live stream. Really means a lot. And yeah, thanks for everything you've done. You've worked very, very hard, and you've all just achieved some phenomenal things. It's certainly inspired me. So thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me. Any last parting words?
Thanks, Dan. Thanks all.
That's okay. All your YouTube channels should be in the link below. I did double check earlier. So please, if you're following now online and you're not sure who these people are, scroll down a little bit, give them a like and subscribe, and watch their videos for their North Downs Way and other ultra adventures. So let's end this now in 3, 2, 1.
Bye.